Well, welcome everyone, and thank you for attending. My name is Nicole Hemingway, and I serve as the CEO for the U.S. Pain Foundation. Today, we are going to discuss the ins and outs of CBD and the importance of advocacy when it comes to access to safe CBD products. Here is our agenda for the day. After going over some general items, I will talk a bit more about the month ahead and what to expect as we continue to explore cannabinoids. Then I have the distinct pleasure of introducing our panelists before we close with a Q&A. Please note that the information provided today is for educational purposes only and may not be used as a substitute for advice from a healthcare professional. U.S. Pain does not recommend or endorse any product, treatment, or modality. As I mentioned on the last slide, we will be taking questions. So please type your question in using the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. We will be taking all the questions after each of the presenters have talked. Finally, all of our webinars are recorded and they will be available to watch at a later date through our website. Today's discussion will focus on cannabinoids, specifically CBD. So with that, I just want to reiterate what I shared earlier, that this information is for educational purposes only and may not be used as a substitute for advice from a healthcare professional. Consult with a licensed physician before using any cannabinoid product. Next slide, please. The U.S. Pain Foundation would like to take a moment to thank our 2023 November sponsors, PureWell, Charlotte's Web, Herbie, and Tribe Tokes. We thank you for supporting this very important initiative. So as we do every November, U.S. Pain develops a robust campaign that really explores a specific pain-related topic. This year, we chose the theme, Know My Cannabinoid. Understanding medical cannabis, understanding CBD. Our focus this November is to convey the importance of understanding the different types of cannabinoids and how they interact with the body, how they can be used to help manage pain, how to identify quality products, and how to better understand the legality and access issues around cannabinoids. Some of our initiatives this month include posting social media facts or statistics, publishing informative articles, developing educational resource guides, and even hosting webinars like this. So next slide. So two resources that I specifically wanted to highlight include an article that delves into the lack of oversight when it comes to regulating CBD products and the importance of testing, as well as the efforts to federally regulate CBD as a dietary supplement. Additionally, we developed a downloadable and print educational guide that breaks down how CBD works, how to vet products, and even what to be asking your doctor. Both of these materials supplement and really sum up items that we're going to be discussing today. So following the webinar, I encourage you to visit our November page to connect to these resources. Again, you can find everything at uspainfoundation.org and then go to our November program for more information. Next slide. So there is a really fun thing happening this month. We truly appreciate you being involved in our educational efforts. And so as a thank you, we are holding a raffle giveaway for participation in our November initiative. To enter the drawing to win cool U.S. Pain swag and the opportunity for a complimentary sample directly from one of our sponsors, you must register and attend one of our two educational webinars, reshare 2 social media Know My Cannabinoid facts, and reshare either a cannabinoid educational guide or a November article on social media. After completing all the participation requirements, you can fill out a form to enter the drawing. There will be 100 winners, and the randomized drawing will take place on December 1st. All the rules pertaining to the raffle can be found on that form. So to find out more information about the raffle, as well as all of our efforts this month, please visit our website, uspainfoundation.org. So today we are going to be discussing CBD, and we are extremely fortunate to be joined by some key leaders in this space. It truly is my distinct pleasure to introduce our guests. Josh Hoffman is an entrepreneur with a passion for the health and wellness industry. His roles include cannabis sales. Sorry, I said that still wrong. Cannabis sales and sales management training. He's provided consulting services to cannabis startups and to mature cannabis operations. And he was the chief education officer of a medically focused cannabis startup prior to his current position as managing partner for an innovative vitamin and nutraceutical company. He currently is the co-founder and managing partner of My Healthy Cells. His ability to communicate and translate complex subjects into layman's terms has served him well over the years, and he is able to interact and relate to CEOs and CFOs, to employees in the trenches, and everyone in between. Next, we have Angie Schwab. Angie is an innovative clinical researcher, inventor, and visionary. Angie thrives on crafting cutting-edge technology solutions that streamline clinical research, accelerating the journey from laboratory discovery to bedside application. Angie holds a bachelor's degree in genetics and a master's degree in genetic counseling and a certification as project management professional. As a two-time founder, she is at the helm of Ashford International LLC. Their online platform, called Ashford Wellness, helps consumers navigate the world of natural products, from CBD to cannabis, mushrooms, and supplements, ensuring they are free from harmful contaminants such as pesticides and heavy metals. Her latest venture, Easy Research Solutions LLC, harness technology to simplify clinical research documentation, empowering researchers to swiftly transform their life-saving therapies into reality. Next, we are joined by Paige Figi. Paige spent years trying to find a treatment for her young daughter, Charlotte, who was diagnosed with Dravet syndrome, a serious form of epilepsy, and suffered from frequent seizures. Because none of the traditional pharmaceuticals and treatments were reliable or successful in reducing and helping Charlotte's life-limiting condition, Paige researched alternative therapies, discovering a type of hemp extract that had no major side effects or psychotropic effects. Paige started giving Charlotte a natural, non-intoxicating therapeutic hemp extract with low THC and high CBD that reduced her daughter's epileptic symptoms and seizures from hundreds per week to less than 3 per month. In 2015, Paige founded the Coalition for Access Now, a 501c4 organization. The work of Paige and the other parents in the Coalition for Access Now led to passage of CBD access laws in all 50 states, multiple countries, and the federal legislation of CBD in the United States. So welcome, everyone. We really are so excited to have you here today to talk about such an important and still very misunderstood topic. Josh, I'm going to turn it over to you for your presentation first.
Thank you. Okay, here we go. Can I get just a verbal that you guys can hear me and see?
All is good.
Okay, thank you so much. Like we had a great introduction, we are going to talk about demystifying hemp and CBD today. So let's jump right into it. What is CBD? It's a very common term that you hear all around. Cannabidiol is what it's called, but it is more widely known as CBD. And that is one of over 100 compounds that belongs to a broad group of constituents in cannabis called cannabinoids. So CBD in hemp is the most abundant occurring cannabinoid that's been linked to a variety of health benefits. And as I mentioned, to date, over 100 of these compounds called cannabinoids have been discovered in the hemp plant. Okay, let me go to the next slide. So how does CBD interact in the body? There is a mechanism in the body that is a network of receptors that interact with the compounds in cannabis. They are known as the CB1 and CB2 receptors, and they are part of what's known as the endocannabinoid system, or ECS for short. Now, these receptors are located throughout the entire body, and some cannabinoids in hemp interact with receptors like the way a key fits into a lock, while other cannabinoids interact with those receptors indirectly. But the point of the endocannabinoid system is to help regulate all organ systems in your body. So if we think about the central nervous system, the peripheral nervous system, the endocrine system, cardiovascular system, lymph system, it just goes on, regulating sleep, just to name a few, you can see how the endocannabinoid system and those receptors play such an important role in basically driving balance or homeostasis in a person's body. Now, how can CBD help to manage pain? Well, when CBD interacts with the endocannabinoid system, those CB1 and CB2 receptors, it sends a message to the body to produce compounds that initiate an anti-inflammatory response. When inflammation is reduced in the body, then we have an opportunity to perceive a reduction in pain. So, you know, it's not about eliminating pain. It's about reducing inflammation, which then initiates a reduction of the symptom and the perception that pain is reducing. But it's not a Band-Aid approach. It's really a more comprehensive way to address inflammation in the body from a systemic perspective. Now, this is where things can get interesting with CBD, because there are many, many different ways to administer it in the body. I'm going to go through some of them, and you can explore more on your own. But basically, inhalation, which is done by either vaping or combusting. And by combusting, I mean you use a lighter or some mechanism to set something on fire. It's administered through the devices or through papers, and it's the quickest time to onset. So if somebody is looking for the fastest way to administer CBD into the body, it would be through vaping or inhalation through combusting. Sublingual means you're administering CBD under the tongue. And when you do that, I'll just, a little aside, don't swallow it right away if you use that method. Hold the CBD under your tongue for at least a minute. If you can do it longer, great, and then swallow it. But that is also a rapid time to onset, maybe 15 to 20 minutes. Ingesting it, either through swallowing a capsule or a gummy. There are cookies and all different forms like edibles. That's the longest time to onset. It's 45 to 90 minutes because it's got to go through the digestive process. But you tend to get the longest period of coverage, if you will, when you take an edible. It takes the longest to kick in, but it also can last longer than, let's say, the inhalation and the sublingual. Topicals is another way to approach, addressing pain or inflammation in the body. You can use a roll-on or a salve or a balm to rub it on that localized area, and that's where you will feel the relief. So that is not a systemic solution like the other ones that I mentioned. It's a topical solution, and you'll feel the relief in that area. So depending on your pain, you may need to be systemic versus localized. Patches are along the same line as well. And patches stick on anywhere from 12 to 24 hours and administer CBD through the skin over a long period of time. So those are a lot of different ways that CBD can be administered. There's no one silver bullet. If you are using CBD already, you've probably experimented with different form factors to find the one that's best for you. And if you have not used CBD yet, remember what I'm telling you. It's not one size fits all. So be open to tinkering to find the right product and the right dose for you. Now, this is one of the most frequently asked questions that we get, and where there seems to be a lot of confusion. What is the difference between hemp CBD oil and hemp seed oil? So let's just demystify it right now. Hemp seed oil is extracted and derived from the flowering buds and the leaves of the hemp plant, where hundreds of different compounds, including CBD, work synergistically together to initiate various health benefits. Hemp seed oil is derived from the pressed or crushed seeds of the hemp plant, where there is no CBD or any other cannabinoids or compounds that are found in the buds and the leaves of the hemp plant. But it is a wonderful cooking oil, and it is a wonderful way to get essential fatty acids into your body. So it's not bad for you, but you're not comparing apples to apples. Make sure that if you want to explore using CBD as an adjunct to other medicines you may be taking, that you are looking at hemp CBD oil and not hemp seed oil. So I think I've beat that one into the ground. Okay. Now, I've mentioned a couple of times in the conversation that CBD is a compound in hemp, but there are hundreds of compounds. So I just wanted to highlight a few others, much lesser known, not as popular as CBD. There is another cannabinoid called CBG, which stands for cannabigerol. That's a non-psychoactive compound. It's been studied and shown to have bone-stimulating growth properties, anti-proliferative properties, and a pain perception reduction property. CBC, or cannabichromene, it's another non-psychoactive compound. It has antiviral properties, anti-inflammatory properties, and it also plays a part in the development of new brain cells. Neurogenesis is a word for that. And finally, CBN, or cannabinol. That is another non-psychoactive compound that has sedative properties. So CBN could be great if somebody was either struggling with falling asleep or staying asleep, whether that's due to pain or some other reason. So just know that there are other products out there in the CBD category that might be beneficial for you as well. But CBD is certainly the most popular of them all. Now, this is probably the most important thing I could leave you with. And our next panelist is going to pick up and dive into this far deeper than I could. And I'm so glad, because one thing that people need to understand about the hemp CBD industry is that it is a multi-billion-dollar unregulated industry. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't rules or guidelines, but nobody is really driving the enforcement of compliance so that it translates into efficacy in products, safety for the users and the consumers, and everything in between. So I leave you with this. It is very important when you are looking to evaluate or use a CBD product that it has been third-party lab tested. That means that who's ever making the CBD sends the product before it goes into any bottle or lotion or anything, capsule, you name it, sends it to a unaffiliated lab that tests for potency, to make sure there's the right amount of CBD in there, to make sure that there's no pesticides, that there's no mold, there's no residual solvents, things that could be harmful to people that consume CBD products. If the manufacturer does not have a certificate of analysis or a third-party lab test, those are somewhat synonymous, then you do not want to do business with them. You do not want to try a product because they cannot tell you what's in their product, nor will you know. So only with full panel third-party lab tests will you know that you're getting the amount of CBD on the label, and you will have peace of mind knowing that it has no pesticides, heavy metals, chemicals, or anything like that. And again, we are going to, Angie's going to go into that in a lot more detail in the next conversation. So that concludes it for me. I appreciate the time, and I will turn it on over back to Nicole.
Well, thank you, Josh, so much for all this information. I really think you did a great job breaking down what CBD is, the different ways that you can administer CBD, and how it interacts with the body. Please, again, if you have questions, type them into the Q&A now, but we will get to all of them at the end. But I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Josh. And Angie, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Absolutely. Thank you all for having me. It's a really fantastic day to be here, to have so many people join. And it's very refreshing to me, exciting to me that people care so much that they're becoming proactive in this kind of discussion with their physicians and family members. So my goal today is really to help you find those products that you can trust. And thank you, Josh. That was a fantastic intro. Really appreciate it because you hit the nail on the head. Like, if you don't see that certificate of analysis, be very, very concerned. And honestly, I wouldn't use those products. That's, just me. But let me give you the whole spiel as to why I feel that way. So just a little background here. A long time ago, in a place far away, I was a kid living on a farm in Minnesota. Like, I had intersections of cornfields and soybean fields. And so I was kind of out there with the animals and the plants and everything. So I was very much, like enjoying the earth. And I was very close to my grandpa. We did everything together. And as he got up in age was about the time when I was deciding what I wanted to do for college, what I wanted to do in my life. And he really instilled in me probably my direction. So at the end, unfortunately, he was in a lot of pain. And he just told me, don't focus on making me live longer. Please help me have a life worth living. And that really sunk in for me because I could see him struggling. And I knew that the prescriptions that he had weren't enough. And that was one of the reasons why I wanted to go into medicine. I wanted to go into research, and it led me down this path today. So thank you all again for having me. And hopefully I can impart a little bit of wisdom on you so that as you pick these products, you can feel more confident in your decisions. I'm not alone in this. So I have a team at Ashford Wellness of physicians. We're all clinicians in one way or another. I was a clinician as a genetic counselor, before I became a researcher, but we have pharmacologists and integrative medicine physicians and researchers and cardiologists. But the entire goal around what we do is helping patients find products that are safer for them. And why are we concerned about this in the realm of hemp and CBD? Is that hemp, for many of the many reasons that it's a phenomenal plant, it's also what they call a phytoremediator. And what that means is it's actually like a sponge. They plant this in toxic areas. So if they had like fields that were over pesticide and that they had other exposures there, or actually to clean up junkyards, they can plant them there. And these plants really absorb everything from the soil and from the air, which makes them incredible, wonderful plants. However, keep that in mind, is that if you're going to use this as a medicine or in a way that is in combination with your medicines for a specific medical reason, that you've got to be very careful, because that plant can absorb all of those things from its surroundings. And I'll get into what those things may be, but just talking about pesticides, heavy metals, and there's also processing chemicals that we need to be concerned about. So how do they get contaminated? It's not just the field. So you may see things like, oh, we're certified organic, which is lovely. I think that's wonderful, but that kind of just scratches the surface, because there can be additives. You could add in like lemon flavoring into your into whatever CBD product that you're taking, a gummy, for example, but that lemon flavoring could have been on lemon trees that were actually sprayed, or not that far away from those that were sprayed, and therefore they actually have pesticides or other issues with them. So a lot of the things that we're seeing are pesticide related, and also beeswax or honey bee type of products, because even though it's organic, bees fly around. Like, that's what they do. And so they're going to neighboring fields and they're picking things up and they're bringing it back. So if you are, in part of a population that's susceptible, and we'll talk about that, like who's more susceptible to these things, then those are things you want to watch out for. And then there's manufacturing. So once they take it out of the field, what do? How do they process it? Where do they store it? And what chemicals do they use to extract it to maybe make a gummy or some of those other products that you get on the shelf? So it can happen anywhere in that entire continuum. Now, does it really matter? Like, we're exposed to stuff every day. All of us are exposed to things, but I will tell you, yes, this does matter. And it matters in a way where you're not actually intuitively thinking it. Rarely, but it certainly can happen, that some of these contaminants can be things like salmonella or E. coli that can make you feel sick immediately. But you may think, oh, it was probably that, lasagna I made last night. It wasn't my CBD. Like, you wouldn't necessarily know. Are not very easily be able to discern that. But then there's also other contaminants and toxins that can kind of creep up on you over time and accumulate in your body more quietly. And these toxins are especially harmful to children, the elderly, those with existing health conditions. So imagine your body's already fighting something and you cannot heal. You can't become better if you're continuing to put toxins in that are bringing your body down. So that's why it's so incredibly important for consumers to watch out for, look for products that have that third-party testing, that COA, and I'll tell you what to look for. Look for those things so that you're proactively searching out ones that are actually designed to help you get the results you want, not setting you a step back. So we did some research. So we looked at hemp-derived products, CBD products, and we tested them for a bunch of things. We took them off the shelf, and these were all unique products, because you'll notice in some stores they have, like, it looks like candy wrappers, like maybe they're trying to attract certain types of people, but not necessarily medical, right? Well, the ones that we did are all brands that promote themselves to the medical community. They're talking to doctors, they're talking to patients, they're trying to get their products into medical offices. And we took 27 of those products, and I'll show you what happened. So we tested them for cannabinoids. 14 of them, which is 52%, had cannabinoids within the 10%, which is good. But that's only half. So 37% were over by more than 10%, which, I don't really feel that probably is going to change too much, except when you start becoming way over, because then now you're not really knowing how much you're dosing yourself. So we had some notable outliers that were concerned to us. One had CBN that was 95% over label claim. Another one said it had some THC in it. It had none. And two products had their initial cannabinoid content overturned upon retesting. So one thing to keep in mind is that this isn't always easy to test either, which is why you have to make sure it's done in a very sophisticated laboratory. And you look for those COAs as we were discussing. This was the major concerning thing to us. And you'll see I have other references on the bottom here. We certainly aren't the only group who has done testing like this. The government's done testing like this, lots of other patient organizations. But we want to just specifically look at the products that are marketed to medical patients. And even the ones marketed to medical patients, they're the ones that come to us and think they're amazing. They're like, everything's wonderful, we're doing the best. And we tested and we found a few concerns. One was, these were all actual pesticides, actually. First product had a pesticide in it that can be toxic for the liver and kidney. The second one was a salve, which can cause poisoning, cytotoxy, which is like, it can kill your cells. It's not good for you, okay? Not good. And then a lotion came in, and that can cause other types of poisoning or mitochondrial dysfunction, which is like your energy powerhouses of your cell. So no matter what, you don't want these things. Like, this is not good. I have a couple cool stories about the companies, though, is that these companies didn't even know they had these issues. They thought they were incredible, and they relied on the COAs from a manufacturer. They sent it off to get manufactured by somebody else. They brought it in. Oh, we are FDA, we have all these certifications. We're amazing. We're good. But they didn't do a full COA. And that's why we keep going back to that, is every single product needs to have its own COA done before you can trust it. So what to look for on this certificate of analysis? There are a few major sections, and you'll see here's one. On our website, we have all the certificates of analysis for any of the companies and products we've worked with, so you can find them all there. But just like that, any other manufacturer should have a COA for every single product. So if it's a salve, go on and find the salve that's, I don't know, mint or whatever it is, the certain flavor or the certain type that product is. Make sure you have a COA. Look for the cannabinoid content. So that's how much CBD is really in it. Look at pesticides, mycotoxins, residual solvents, heavy metals, and the microbiology. So that's like, you don't want mold in there, things like that. So really, if you honestly look for these and you see that they have a COA and they're testing for all these things, and on the bottom, they have this little area that says like pass. I don't know, hopefully you can see that on the bottom corner here. But that will make life so much easier for you. You don't need to read every single pesticide that's listed there. Just look for these major content areas and then make sure that they have a passing rating. So I hope that was very helpful for all of you. And if there's ever any way I can help you, feel free to reach out to me. Happy to be here. Thanks.
Angie, thank you so much. This was definitely eye-opening, and we have gotten a lot of questions, but also just a lot of comments between both you and Josh, just saying thank you so much for making this easier to understand, and really breaking down why it's so important to be looking at the different types of CBD that we are as products and choosing ones that are going to be safe and effective for you to help manage pain. So again, just so you know, I see the questions, keep putting them in as you go along, but we will wait till we are done before we start answering any of them. So now I want to turn it over to Paige to share more about your personal connection to CBD, but really also now your life mission when it comes to advocating for CBD regulation as a dietary supplement.
Thank you. Yeah, it's great to hear your presentations, Angie and Josh, really helpful, informative. So I don't have to cover some of that stuff. And I do think there's a real magic when a bunch of people, smart people, are in the room with me and passionate about the same topic, because it can get, as you probably well know, a little lonely out there when you're working in this arena. So my story started about 13 years ago with my daughter, Charlotte, pediatric epilepsy, very, very severe condition. And we had reached the end of the road of treatment options pharmaceutically and even alternative therapies. I mean, we tried everything for this child. Her seizures were at 4 years old, were catastrophic. She was on life support. She was fed through a feeding tube. She was on oxygen. The hospital had nothing left to try. I think we had tried 19 multiple times, different drugs. And I usually had something left in the cupboard is how I looked at it, the next drug to try. And we had run out. And so we stopped taking her into the hospital. We were in home hospice. I had signed a DNR, and her seizures, just to give you the landscape, were every 30 minutes, she would have about a 29-minute seizure, and she was unconscious, a tonic-clonic seizure. And so she'd have a minute to recover, and then it would just start over again. So we were counting the days for her end of life care. And, I think as a mother, if anyone here is listening, has children, or has a loved one you're caring for, I think you don't ever really truly give up. You're thinking, I'm in America. We are the greatest health, country in the world. There's got to be something we've missed or overlooked. There's got to be something, because I know she's still in there somewhere, possibly. I started digging. I started collecting information. I'm not a scientist, as these other presenters are heavily qualified to speak to the science and testing of this new category. I was just a mom. I was a special forces mom with a son and twin girls with a deployed spouse in the Middle East, just trying to manage and keep my head above water. But I was good at digging, and I was good at collecting information. So I started hiring translators. There's other countries at the time. So I'm in Colorado, to give you some background. At the time, 13 years ago, Colorado was a medical marijuana state. CBD, we didn't call it CBD, as Josh mentioned. Cannabidiol, which no one had heard of, was a Schedule I substance, the most dangerous controlled substance in the country. And it was lumped in with cannabis. And there are other countries that had more of a freedom to study this substance. And so I was asking them for their information. They were using rodents with seizures to study CBD as an anti-epileptic agent. And it was a very powerful anti-seizure extract is what they were using on these rats. And so I figured, I live in Colorado. I'm sure someone knows what's going on, what this is, and can help me. No one had a clue. No one knew how to pronounce the word. People were using and selling medical cannabis with high levels of THC. So I was really just on my own to try and sort out and test. As Angie was discussing testing, we shouldn't have to be responsible for all of these things. This should be, part of me believes this should sort of be taken care of. We should be able to trust products. I was going to dispensaries. I had to get my daughter a medical marijuana card, buying whatever they had that sounded non-intoxicating. So wasn't looking for high THC. I was looking for very, very low THC, high CBD. I think at the time, 3% of the businesses or less were testing their own products they were selling. So I was buying the least intoxicating products they were selling. Like, it doesn't get you high. No one wants to buy it. I'm like, hold on to that. I'll be right down. I would buy it, send it to the laboratory, spending thousands of dollars, hours, countless, months of work when I just wanted to spend time with my dying kid. And I was finding very little information. Some very, very wonderful people stepped in after I called everybody in the medical marijuana industry in Colorado. People stepped in to help me. They had heard of this, and they were breeding plants high in CBD, low in THC, hemp, essentially by definition. So it's non-intoxicating. It's not really a medical or recreational cannabis product at all, but that's the regime, the umbrella I had to operate under. The reason I'm still relevant and I'm explaining the story, I'll get to the point of my relevance and a child with epilepsy. I had a very stringent set of criteria that I needed to give this to a dying human being. 9 very strict things that I had to know exact milligrams. I had to be able to track and understand what I was giving for her. It could not change. It had to be, I needed to know every other thing in the plant. As Angie explained, it's a phytoremedial crop. So there's all kinds of things with irresponsible farming that the plant leaches from the soil, and on and on and on. And so I had this criteria. People agreed to adhere to it. And we formulated an extract, gave it to Charlotte. I had to put it in her port, in her stomach. She couldn't swallow and her seizures stopped. So she was having 2 major seizures an hour. She was having hundreds per week and they stopped. So for 1 whole week, she didn't have a single seizure. It's like 350 tonic-clonic, massive grand mal seizures. And it was this outrageous, astounding, miraculous result. So in a way, she was sort of like the perfect guinea pig, because you really can't have any more seizures than always seizing. And so we could see a quick result. And it took a long time, because I'm seeing a lot of questions on dosing, and I'm not a doctor, but it took months to get to a therapeutic level for Charlotte's therapeutic level. She was on multiple other medications. So for her, it was a success, but it was slow and steady. And I was very much not a cannabis activist at the time. I was very conservative. I still am, on how to approach drugs, on how to approach medications. When you have a rare disorder, you know there's a limited amount of options and solutions. And so every single thing you try matters, and you have to give it 100%. So while this is everywhere now, and people might think I'm going to give it a shot, as you heard earlier, it matters how you do it and how serious you take it, because you might not have another option. So what happened with that was I waited about 1.5 years to tell the story to the media. We were approached for 18 months wanting to turn this into a pot mom kind of a story. I had Child Protective Services involved. I was very cautious. I wasn't an activist. I just wanted to help my kid not suffer. And so I waited 18 months. We picked a doctor, a neurosurgeon, to tell the story on CNN. And that was Sanjay Gupta. And we're still friends to this day. I think they're filming 9 or 10 of these documentaries and kind of threading Charlotte's origin CBD story through them all, but they're all about a different topic. And the most recent, it's called Weed. The most recent CNN Weed documentary was about seniors. So it's not just pediatric epilepsy, but the importance of this is what happened when we told the story to CNN. People had to make a very difficult decision. This is back in 2010. They had to move here and change their zip code. People had to move from other countries to get citizenship, learn English, move to Colorado to access this where it existed. This is where we lived. We could not leave the state. These families could not leave the state once they were here. They were drug trafficking a Schedule I substance across state lines, breaking multiple laws. So they were stuck here. They called them medical hemp refugees. And it was this big exodus. And it actually created this whole movement and a family of people that we on our own found a solution to an incredible life-threatening suffering. And while it started with pediatric epilepsy, that's now the smallest population of people that use this. So what I did when that happened, now at this point, Charlotte's walking, she's talking, she's eating. She would walk down the driveway to hop on the school bus and go to school. So she's living a medical-free, drug-free life at this point, and almost completely seizure-free, using just CBD oil. And so what I did was I started the Coalition for Access Now, and the initial purpose of this 501c4 was to go back to these states and countries so these people could move home. Some of them were living in my house. So I was literally like, I was motivated, no offense if you're listening, to get them out of my house as guests and just to get them to go back home to live as a united family once again. I thought it was outrageous. As Nicole always says, that a zip code dictates your care. I think that this is America. That's outrageous. And so I went back to those states one by one and passed and helped them pass CBD legislation. We tried for the most we could possibly get in each state, and some states were ridiculously narrow of just CBD possession for pediatric epilepsy only. And we don't want to know how you got it here. You're going to probably break some laws to get it across lines to, say, Utah, but you're allowed to have it without prosecution. That was the most narrowest type of bill. It created a patchwork of laws. When we hit halfway, and these were going really, really fast, we were passing bills in a month. Missouri was the fastest, 28 days. We got something done in the state of Missouri. The US government in Washington, D.C. took notice when we passed halfway. So half the states are legal. The next half have something written and are about to be legal. The first federal bills were written, and those early bills carried Charlotte's name. They asked for two things, and we asked for it to be descheduled, to be legalized. This should not have ever been lumped in with cannabis as a Schedule I substance. This is different. This is non-intoxicating. This has no side effects of negative side effects, and this can be dealt with separately. We can carve this one thing out and deal with this separately. So we asked for it to be legalized, removed from the Controlled Substances Act. And the second thing we asked for in those early bills about 2015 was it needed to be simultaneously regulated as a dietary supplement. So my Coalition for Access Now is active. And what we're doing now is just that second piece. So it's been legalized. This was descheduled. It was taken from a Schedule I substance and totally removed from the CSA. And while that was the biggest hurdle, we never got that boring regulatory piece done. So the FDA should absolutely regulate this as a dietary supplement. It fits there. It would take care of all of the problems we talked about in the first half of this webinar. We need clarity in labeling, and we get that through independent testing. And I, as a mother purchasing this for my sick kid, had to test that on my own. And I'm glad I did. So I had that knowledge of what was in there, but I don't feel that every single person, one, is doing that, and two, should even have to. I think we all want the government out of our lives, but in some cases, regulation is necessary. So in the span of 13 years, what's happened before legalization and then after CBD legalization is that the market has grown. There's potentially 4,000 CBD brands in the country, in the United States. There's 45 million Americans that take a daily CBD dose. And I think that's an underestimate. But that is a market that is spoken. If we deemed this important enough to legalize, Congress should deem this important enough to regulate as a supplement. So simply finishing this last thing, finishing this whole process from start to finish is just this last little piece. And so that's what the coalition is working on. We have a House bill, and then that is HR 1629. And we have a Senate bill, and the Senate bill is 2451. And these bills do just that. And it's really a no-brainer. It's not contested. There's no opposition. And it's a really passable bipartisan thing. It's just kind of like a smaller little quadrant of, it's not this big, sexy, exciting movement anymore because everyone has access. But what do they have access to? And the spirit of how this began, giving this to sick little children, is not what this looks like today, because we never finished, because the absence of action, we never finished that regulatory component. It's in gas stations, and there are dirty products with heavy metals. And that was never the spirit of how this began. And so I think it's really important. I think it's a very worthwhile cause. And so I'm still out there working and stumping up on the Hill in Washington every month to get this across the finish line. The issue is that I'm a constituent in Colorado. So I have my 2 senators and my 1 House representative. I need people to reach out and tell Congress that they care about this. So if you're using this, if you're caring for somebody who's using CBD, or if you maybe someday in the future want access to this, you're going to want to know what's in it. In the absence of action, again, if we don't get this regulated as a supplement, this is going to go away. Something is going to happen. People are going to get hurt. A capitalistic market. They're only going to be concerned of the bad players are only going to be concerned about their bottom line and making money. And so there's gross products out there. And so these bills tidy that up. It's really a simple, doable thing. And Congress has this year shown an appetite to get it done. And, they all want to win. If you're watching politics at all, it's kind of chaos right now, but that doesn't deter us, because this is like one of those bills that's just a really easy win. But they need to hear from you. You're their constituent. They need to hear, and this is kind of a really depressing thing I've heard frequently in Washington, or it's heartening, however you want to look at it. But I've heard repeatedly over 13 years that if a senator or a House member hears from a constituent 60 times, like 60 different ways of communication, 60 emails or 60 phone calls or everything combined, if they hear about one issue 60 times in one office, that is a top of the pile issue. And for me, that's a letdown. That's 60 people. I've had house parties larger than 60 people. I think we can take care, and that's just one office. So I think we can, with 45 million daily users, I think we can accomplish this. I think there's a lack of confidence in Congress. I think there's an intimidation factor on how do I reach them? What if I say the wrong thing? So we've created a platform on the website where you can go and look at the language and look at what we're trying to get accomplished in Washington and reach out. I really encourage you to reach out, because we could have this done, and we should have had this done 5 years ago when it was legalized. But that's what I'm doing. I've vowed to not quit until it's finished. I know there's bigger, more interesting issues like psychedelics and cannabis reform and much larger issues, but this is actually doable right now. And when this legislation is passed, it's a instantly actionable issue. We would be required, these companies would be required to have accuracy. We would know exactly what we're taking. And so it's really important to me. Maybe it's not that exciting, but I haven't failed at a legislative CBD project so far. And so I'm not going to quit until this is finished. And I just encourage you all to ask questions, reach out, get involved in the coalition. I'm not asking for money. I'm not selling anything. I'm just literally getting this done because I'm very proud of this industry. This is no longer children like Charlotte. This is seniors. This is professional athletes take this for pain and inflammation. This is veteran groups and our very massive pain population in the United States. So the Coalition for Access Now very specifically is the consumer voice in DC for CBD use. There are industry groups as well, but I just represent the consumer. So that's you. If you're listening, I'm representing you. So I encourage you to get involved. And I really just wanted to thank the U.S. Pain Foundation for partnering with us and for creating this platform. I know it's a lot of work to run nonprofits, and it's necessary to educate the public on what this is. And like I said, I'm seeing a lot of dosing questions. Having this regulated as a dietary supplement would take care of a lot of the issues that we are unsure about right now. Doctors could discuss this. My doctors recommend supplements for me, vitamins and supplements. And this could go under that category and more people could find access. So thank you so much. I'll stop talking and I'm going to hand it back over to Nicole.
Well, first of all, Paige, I just have to say thank you. I'm hearing like in the chat, like you are a warrior to you and to Charlotte for what you have done and created to make sure that other people have the opportunity to access CBD to help manage their lives and have a better quality of life. You're a trailblazer. I just want to say thank you so much, and your passion, your conviction. We are so excited at US Pain Foundation to be able to partner and advocate alongside you to make sure that we have better regulation around CBD. So with that, there are so many questions, and I do want to just say again, what Paige had mentioned earlier, we can't answer questions around dosing, but there's certain other questions in there sort of around those same parameters that I am going to ask because I'm hoping that either through Paige or Josh or Angie, you might have suggestions and thoughts on how individuals can go about getting more information. But the first one I actually want to start with, because I think it was asked a couple of times, was how often do COAs get renewed, or do they have to be renewed?
Oh, that's a great question and hotly debated. So some companies will, they may have like a lot number or a batch number, and some companies, the best companies, are going to test every single one of these, and they're going to list them on their website, like batch number so-and-so, lot number so-and-so. They will put that on there. And so every time they make a new batch or a new lot, they will put them out there. So if you find a company, you're working with a company and you see that on their website, that is a very, very good sign. Others, maybe they'll test once, like they'll decide they're going to make a gummy, for example, and that's their recipe. They're going to test it once to make sure their recipe is fine and they're not going to change their ingredients. And, you know, in that situation, we think you should be testing at least once a year. Okay. Like, I get that it's expensive and not every company can do, they all can do it. Let me rephrase that. They can do it. Not every company chooses to do it at every batch. And then you kind of have a step down from there. The hard part is, as Paige was alluding to, none of this is required, literally none. So you can have a CBD company, they don't do any testing whatsoever because it's not even required as overall in the US. It's not a national thing. So what I would say is it varies, but if you can find something that's done at least within that year on that batch that you're looking at, go that route.
Great, thank you. Josh, I know that you answered it, but if you wouldn't mind just saying one more time the difference between hemp seed oil and CBD, or hemp seed oil and hemp extract.
Absolutely. And I took a sneak peek at some of these great questions, and there was one that I want to include in that said, like, I think, what's the difference between hemp and CBD? So I'll answer both of those. Hemp seed oil is derived, hemp seed cooking oil, hemp seed oil, no CBD in it whatsoever, no other compounds. It is derived from the crushed or pressed seeds of the hemp plant. Great omega, omega-3, omega-6 fatty acids, but not going to interact with the endocannabinoid system because there's no cannabinoid, CBD or anything. The difference between hemp and CBD is CBD is extracted from the hemp plant. So it's a compound, one of hundreds in the hemp plant. The most abundant, as has been kind of talked about, when hemp grows, almost all of it is CBD, little nominal amounts of THC. It's a crop. And I apologize, but all of you guys covered the legalities better than I could, so thank you. So those are the answers. Pretty simple. The CBD comes from the flowering bud and the leaves. Hemp seed oil comes from the seeds. Perfect. And there's a lot of medicinal compounds that come from the flowering bud and the leaves, but only omegas and essential fatty acids and things like that come from the seeds themselves.
Okay, thank you. Is there any concerns? Again, US Pain Foundation definitely says that you want to consult a healthcare professional before doing anything with anything we're talking about today, any treatment modality, therapy. But one question that I was getting was, how do you necessarily bring this up with your provider? And what if they don't understand CBD? Where do you go from there?
Is that towards me or anybody?
Uh,
I would say, believe it or not, and I want to give some time to Angie and Paige if they want to weigh in on that. But in my experience, believe it or not, more and more doctors are actually having a conversation with their patients, letting them know, you know what, you might want to try CBD as an adjunct to trazodone, tramadol, whatever you're using, because they're a lot of them are selling it in their practices now. More needs to happen, and if they don't know anything about it, I would go to this Paige's coalition or to Angie, because they're experts right there, and honestly, I mean, there are resources right here, right now for the members of the US Pain Foundation. I would leverage those relationships.
Thank you.
I'm
Angie,
happy to,
yes.
yeah, happy to add a couple of resources to this. So two groups that I've been very impressed with, also nonprofits. I'm not a clinician, or not a physician that does that. So LEAF 411, that's LEAF 411, or the Realm of Caring. Both of them are phenomenal. They have hotlines that you can call. They'll give you general information. They will help you navigate this conversation with your healthcare provider. I would also say that group of physicians that seems to be very open to CBD and how that can interact with other prescriptions are integrative medicine physicians. We're seeing them really come up fast and embrace this and these discussions.
Thank you. Paige, a question that we got. So do we just reach out to our senators and House of Representatives? Do we do it consistently? Should we reach out once, twice? I think individuals really want to get involved and make sure that they are taking action and being proactive and using their lived experiences to amplify this legislation and hopefully toward passage. So any other input that you can provide would be great.
Yep. So we'll have an action item on our website eventually. This round of lobbying that I've done, I haven't asked for it to be a grassroots public outreach as we have in the past 13 years. We're kind of just doing this internally with these killers I hired, my pit bulls in DC, my A-team. But absolutely, you should reach out because they really want to hear from their own state. Their job is to represent their constituents. While you may not believe that, or maybe you do, that is their higher job, that our tax money is paying them. So they need to know what your will is. And so I would write one letter or 3 letters to each senator in your state and to your representative of your zip code. Each of these people have a form online that you can access. You can use any of the language from the Coalition for Access Now website, or you can use my Take Action link to send an automated letter. I haven't done that because they really want to hear your story. They don't want my language with your name signed at the bottom. They want to hear your personal story, why you feel CBD should be regulated as a supplement. And so it really is quite simple. Their staff that receives the email or the phone call or a snail mail letter, anything, is required to take that to their boss. So yours just went into the pile of 60 minimum that they need to hear from. So it's quite easy that you can misspell it. You can get your language wrong. It doesn't matter. They just need to know that these bills are important to America.
Great, thank you. Are there expiration dates for CBD products? Angie or Josh?
There should be. I mean,
yes, there should be.
And this is where, again, what Paige is doing and what Angie is doing is so important. Just trying to get standardization. so things aren't so convoluted and complicated. Yes, and normally it's, 12 to 18 months. Now, can it last longer? Yeah, but oxidative stress changes it. So it might be 1,000 milligrams this year, but if it's in your medicine cabinet 2 years from now, who knows what's going on with it? So yeah, 12 to 18 months max is pretty much, and topicals may be a bit different because beeswax and shea butter and things like that have a longer shelf life. So there may be, I don't know the exact specificities if there's a difference, but when it comes to tinctures or anything you're consuming, 12 to 18 months should be the max, in my personal and my humble opinion.
I think, Josh, you're absolutely right about that. And a couple things to keep in mind to keep your products a little bit longer is keep them out of direct sunlight, keep them out of extreme temperatures. And so if they say store it on the shelf, do it in a cabinet, much better. It's going to stay a little bit better for you.
Great, thank you. Josh, I know you talked about CBD and the different ways that it can be administered. A question that we received was around sort of the other CBs that we talked about, the CBN, CBG, CBC.
Yeah.
Those types of products, are they also administered in all those ways, sublingual gummies, or is it a specific way?
What a good question. That's a great, all the questions, by the way, are fantastic. That is opening up to a broader application of these cannabinoids, because you can find CBD, in almost any form, but these nominal or minor cannabinoids, like CBG, CBN, but yes, there is abundance of CBG on the market. You can get a CBG in a tincture, and administer it sublingually. You can get it in a gummy form, so ingesting it through the digestive tract. CBN, same thing, CBN gummies, CBN capsules, CBN tinctures. So there is going to come a day where I think, based on a person's symptoms, you're going to have, just the way a pharmacist compounds medicine for you, they're going to compound cannabinoids for you, and it's going to be different for person to person based on what their symptom and condition is. So interesting, but that would be my answer.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Regarding CBD, are there any issues operating, let's say, vehicles, or is it safe to take daily? And again, I'm going to preface this before anybody answers. Please always consult your healthcare professional before. But I will, I don't know, Angie or Josh, which one would rather?
Oh, you're pointing at me.
Well, so much of this comes back to what Angie does, because if they don't have a certificate of analysis, a third-party lab test, there could be 0.2% of THC, 0 or 10%. And if it's 5 or 10%, guess what? You're not operating that motor vehicle, right? And that is, this is so good. These two panelists that are right now in this square's bookending me, they are the future of this for all of us, myself included, because I take these products, and I'm saying myself. So generally, no. If you know the source, like Angie said, you see the certificate of analysis, it tells you that it's THC free or 0.1%, then no, it should not impact your, cognition, your ability to, or, it shouldn't impair you. But that is the reason why you need to know where you're getting it from and how much THC is in it. And if you really want to err on the side of caution, then you go broad spectrum or isolate that's not supposed to contain THC, but you still don't know until you test it. So
yeah.
Thanks, Josh. Angie?
Yeah, thank you so much, Josh, for that. And you're going to see a couple words that are thrown out a lot. One is like psychoactive and the other is intoxicating. So psychoactive means does it actually work in the brain? And CBD and THC, yes, works throughout your body, right? but it should not be intoxicating in and of itself. So that's the thing that would cause you to maybe have issues driving or impairment in a way. So CBD as its own should not be intoxicating. Again, be careful. You know, obviously, if you took it and you feel like something is different, please be careful. Please be aware of yourself and your surroundings and your reactions to these things. But in general, it should not be intoxicating.
Yes, please, Paige.
I just want to add one thing that it might be the elephant in the room. I work with USADA, a drug testing and NSF organizations who are studying this so you could have a hemp product, a CBD hemp legal product with less than 0.3% THC and still test positive on a drug test. So if anyone's working in the military or government or is a drug tested athlete, there is a chance taking legal hemp that you could test positive, depending on the amount, depending on your own anatomy and your liver function. And so just be aware of that. And that's just even more reason why we have to pass legislation because it's ridiculous. So 1 week ago, I took a CBD night sleep gummy and I'm going to test positive and get fired from my job. So just be aware of that. And the specifics of that, the testing needs to change. It's outdated, but legislation needs to pass before we can really get anything done.
Thank you. Such a good point to bring up. Thank you.
You added a great point, Paige. And it's also very confusing because you see things like Delta 8, Delta 9, all these other conglomerate of things. And a lot of these are synthetic and a lot of these absolutely are intoxicating. Like there are companies that are making them designed to be intoxicating, even though they'll tell you they're just hemp, right? So they're taking the THC components, or they're creating THC components that are intoxicating and putting them into a hemp product to get them sold. So not to open that can of worms, because that's a whole nother discussion. But just please be careful that what we're talking about here is CBD itself, just CBD, and not these other Delta unique cannabinoids that you may be seeing out there.
Thank you, Angie, for sharing that. And one thing I just want to also say is, as I mentioned earlier, US Pain Foundation developed educational guides and booklets to go along with our No My Cannabinoids campaign, one of which is other cannabinoids that looks at what you were just talking about, Angie. So please, if you have questions about that, please go and check out that resource online. We also have another guide that we put together, as I shared, that's all about hemp CBD. We really wanted to make sure, and then the final one is also medical cannabis. Might as well just round it all out. But what we wanted to do was make sure that everybody understood the differences between each of these cannabinoids and how they impact the body, questions to consider, things that you should be knowing about this, to make sure that you are being safe, that you feel empowered and equipped with the tools you need to talk about it with your healthcare professionals, and then hopefully find things that are going to help manage pain. So thank you. I mean, this discussion can go on, and there's so many different questions in here. One that I wanted to ask, because I think it's really important, and it's actually a great question, is how long do you need to consume CBD, or do you have to use it consistently before you start to see its impacts?
Everybody's different. That's the thing, you know, I mean, and I know we could all tell you stories about this. I've seen people in 24 hours take a product and they have a therapeutic response. And I see people that 7 days later is when they have a little breakthrough. And I see people that have no breakthroughs. And it goes back to kind of what I said, there's not a silver bullet, right? And so you really have to be patient and open to tinkering to find the right product in the right form and in the right amount. And yes, there's a lack of guidance out there, but with all of the resources that you have for the US Pain Foundation, you guys have a great jumping off point to really do this properly. So everybody's different, but Don't be discouraged if you're using a product and you don't feel something after a couple of days. Stick with it. If you're working with a healthcare provider, you might communicate, hey, what happens if I take this for a week or two, this much, and I don't feel anything? And I guarantee you the doctor is going to say, take a little bit more. But those are conversations you can have with professionals in the industry, clinicians or doctors. So that's the truth. I'd like to hear
Yes,
what others'
Angie.
perspective is.
Yeah, sorry to keep chiming in. You give me so many great ideas. So one of the really cool trends that we actually see is people are taking it. They're like, this doesn't do anything for me, la la la. But I'll hear you out. I'll take it for 30 days. And they're like, I took it for 30 days. Then they go off and then they call me 2 3 days later, and they're like, oh yeah, it was doing something. So it's kind of funny because our bodies adapt slowly over time, and sometimes you don't even realize it. And I would love to hear, Paige, what your experience was with your daughter.
Mine was very different, much more conservative. Remember, she was very in the optics of giving this, fringe, controversial thing to a child. She was the first pediatric patient with epilepsy here in the state to do this, to get a red card is what we called it. So I was very conservative. I was very used to dosing anti-epileptic drugs. Every anti-epileptic medication has a side effect of seizures, ironically. So I dosed it just like I did every other drug, every other benzodiazepine. I went up no sooner than 2 weeks. No faster than 10%, more like 3 to 5% titration increase. And it took like 9 months, and she was on other medications. So I was removing drugs. I've changed only one thing at a time. I charted everything in a scientific way, so it was reproducible, so I could share that. So mine was the opposite. I don't think this needs to be done that just as a pharmaceutical. I'm glad that exists, but that's how I had to do it at the time because I was under the microscope. 8 to 9 months, we removed every other drug. She got to her therapeutic dose, and she remained at that dose for, we were 9 years, no other drugs, no hospital trips, just CBD, which was for her syndrome, which is a very, very severe, one of the worst kinds of epilepsy. It's just outrageous to be that many years drug-free. So that was the most conservative way you could do it is how I did it, like you would dose an opioid. And that's just my opinion. But how else are you going to know what's working unless you do one thing at a time, very slowly, don't change anything else, and titrate up and wait 2 weeks between. So I'd watch the seizures come back on week 2, but I'd wait until that fifth day 15 to go up. And that's how little I had left. I had 0 things left to try. So I treated this like it was my last end resort. And I'll add one more thing. I don't bring this up too often, but Charlotte's a twin, and her twin sister started having seizures. I think she was 8 years old at the time, probably related to that genetic syndrome, but they never found a reason for Chase's problem. But for Chase, her first line of defense that has been effective was CBD extract. For Charlotte, it was her last option. And so it was a real blessing to do it the way I did it. So I knew for sure what was happening, what we were seeing.
Thank you so much, Paige. Would you mind giving the website for Coalition for Access Now? I believe it's coalitionforaccessnow.org. Is that correct?
It's coalitionforaccess.org.
Perfect. So coalitionforaccess.org. Some individuals were asking so that they can find out more information around the bill titles. So this one is an interesting question, and it's a great question. There are CBD products that are 100% THC free. How do those help, and how do they work within the body?
Wow, that's another great question. let me answer it by stating this, and this is not to say that a CBD or THC free is inferior to a formula or a tincture that's got a little nominal amount of THC. But you know, it's that if it's a CBD isolate, which you can also get in liquid form as well, and powder form, different crystalline form as well. It's technically like 99% CBD. Of course, you want to make sure it's tested. I think we beat that one to the ground. But it's going to interact with the receptors in your body, CB1 and CB2 receptors, the same way that the other compounds. Here's the difference. There's hundreds of compounds in hemp, most of which, as they find them, discover them, and study them, they're like, oh my goodness, this could have a medical application. Okay, that being said, if I was going to go off and fight a battle, would I want to go with hundreds of soldiers or one? I wouldn't want to go with one. It'll be a pretty quick battle. I'd like to go with hundreds. So, but you have to determine your tolerance to THC. Maybe your job doesn't permit you to be anywhere close to contact to THC, which is why your THC-free products or your isolate, to be sure, are better options. But there's no difference in how that cannabinoid, CBD or cannabidiol, would interact with the receptors. You just get a lot more synergistic effects when you have those other compounds in there than CBD just acting alone. But that does not mean CBD. I know people that have taken CBD and it's been a game changer. No other compound, no other cannabinoid, nothing. So everybody's different. But the answer is it's going to interact with the same CB1 and CB2 receptors that those other compounds in the hemp plant interact with.
I'll add one thing to Josh's, if that's okay. I agree with that. The full spectrum is best. Some of the bandwidth that's gotten this in the media was doing a whole plant, whole hemp plant, removing the THC so that people could some of these companies could get NSF for sport certification, partnered with, for example, Major League Baseball. So all the players can take this because they are drug tested. And while a whole plant with that minor amount of THC is more beneficial, they're allowed to take this and talk about it, and their trainers dose them. So it's like, do you make it? If it does something, it's worth it because it's getting it out there in the spotlight for an option for people. So I just wanted to add that because the drug testing issue is safe with the NSF THC free whole plant hemp extracts.
Thank you. And then Angie, this is going to be our final question before I ask you all one last thing that it's just my question. Does going to a dispensary guarantee a quality, safe product?
No. Sorry, I just don't have another answer for you. It all comes down to the testing and what you're taking. And dispensaries, again, they don't have any legal requirements to look at COAs, to do any testing, to make sure those products are good. They are there to sell them. So just keep that in mind. The good dispensaries are going to have those COAs. They're going to be educated. They're going to be able to help you. So again, I'm sorry, but you'll have to continue to keep doing some due diligence on your own.
Thank you. So to close out, I'm going to ask each of you this final question. What is the one takeaway you hope our listeners go home with today? If nothing else, what is that one thing you want them to understand about CBD, about regulation, about access? And I'm going to start with Josh.
Oh boy, that is a fantastic question. Whew, that's a tough one. Biggest takeaway, go home. All hemp is not created equal. You can get it from a gas station or a legitimate store, and that's not to put gas stations down, but I wouldn't go to a gas station and ask for medical advice. And due to the regulations still kind of forming and compliance being enforced and things like that, still kind of being born, like Angie just said, you got to do a little due diligence, but in and of itself, hemp is a very interesting plant. It was in the early 1900s in this country, and then it wasn't, but we won't go there. That's another conversation. But the compounds in it, this is what I'll leave you with. There are tens of thousands of more studies on hemp and cannabis, peer-reviewed, medical-reviewed studies that show absolutely it has medical benefits. And there might be less than 200 on NSAIDs, and people take NSAIDs every day.
Thank you, Angie.
Well, I think y'all can guess what my takeaway is. Please go read your COAs and go find them. But in addition to that, also adding on to what Josh said, like, plants are incredible. You know, for some reason, we've kind of taken ourselves away from nature and relying on that because we've kind of been force-fed, like, if you got a problem, take a pill, like meaning a prescription. And so I really commend people for going out and thinking that there may be more natural products that can work in synergy or could potentially replace some of those medications, because nature's all around us, right? This is what we came from. So I commend you for even being on this call and entertaining the ideas that there's more options available for you.
Great, thank you. And Paige.
I'll second that, Angie, that sometimes outrageously nature can solve our problems. I'm going to add two more things.
Yeah.
Sometimes the dumbest person in the room can come up with a solution. And probably the most important thing I'll leave you with is that your voice absolutely matters. We drive the change in this country. We just have to speak up. And if we don't speak up, we deserve to get nothing.
Well, thank you. Again, I just appreciate each and every one of you, Josh, Angie, Paige, talking about CBD education and specifically recognizing the need for safe, accessible products to be on the market for those living with chronic conditions and health conditions is so very important. So we truly value and appreciate you not only sharing your expertise when it comes to the science behind CBD and regulation, but also your deep passion and dedication to help others, for sharing your personal lived experiences and how CBD has made a difference in your lives. Thank you for your advocacy, your time, and your general support. So again, just to close, I just want to reiterate that US Pain does not recommend or endorse any one product, treatment, or modality, but rather we share information for educational purposes. And that is to empower you with tools and resources so that you can discuss these with your own healthcare team. Thank you again for joining us today. We really hope that you stay engaged throughout the month as we get to know my cannabinoid. Please share this webinar with your friends, your families. Make sure that people are aware about CBD, about advocacy issues and regulation, and let's keep everybody safe and working together. I definitely think that we are going to see change. We've already seen it. It has already started. And let's just keep it going. So thank you, everyone.